Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and today on the show, we have Jen Sanasi, Zach Seward, Will Foxley, and Bev Powers. Welcome to the show, guys. Awesome to have you here.
Hello.
And let's kick it off by talking about Blockstream. So, Zach, going to kick it off to you.
Yes, Bitcoin technology firm Blockstream just raised a boatload of money, $210 million to be precise, making it the latest of the crypto unicorns. First of all, I feel like everyone's a crypto unicorn these days, so we'll downplay that. But the valuation puts it at 3.2 billion, and it gives Blockstream some fresh capital to ramp up its efforts in the mining space. Seeing as Blockstream is based in Canada, I have to toss this to Jen for her immediate take.
What's the anti-unicorn? Is it a narwhal? Can we just call them narwhals now or something?
So we have a Canadian crypto unicorn, Blockstream here.
We have a Canadian
what stands out? What stands
unicorn.
out to you? What stands out to you from up north?
I mean, it's not surprising to me that they were able to raise a bunch of money. They have Blockstream Energy. I think like a few months ago, we heard they were partnering with Square on a solar-powered mine. I think VCs are really interested in the clean mining narrative. And so this feels good, I think, for Canada. We are taking the win. We have another tech unicorn up here in the north. NBA Top Shot is another crypto unicorn that we have up here. So it's just like a great day. We are happy. We are paving the way when it comes to clean mining. But Will, I want to hear your take on this from a mining perspective.
From a mining perspective and not from a Canadian perspective. I cannot help you out there. Mining perspective, pretty interesting news to see them come out with this. Of course, they hold a lot of Bitcoin also, which I think is key to their valuation. They hold a tremendous amount of Bitcoin just as a company. And that's kind of their proposition when they came out in 2014 was to be like a scaling solution for Bitcoin through their liquid network. That hasn't seen a ton of adoption to date, but I don't think that would necessarily happen yet because Bitcoin fees are still relatively low compared to where people think they might end up if it really does become like a settlement network for the entire financial ecosystem. In terms of mining, they have been very aggressive over the last few years getting into Bitcoin mining. Of course, Bitcoin, there's not a lot of different projects that you can build on top of it, and that's by design. There's only a few avenues you can get into to make revenue. That's mining, that's making an exchange, and that's maybe somehow like making a side chain. There's also like the wallet business, of course. So I'm expecting to see them get into the mining business more and more. They announced like this clean energy solution that they came up with the other day, which is basically like dropping shipping containers filled with miners onto stranded natural gas or stranded energy sources and utilizing those energy sources to mine Bitcoin and reducing things like CO2 emissions in the process, or methane emissions rather. But Zach, I'll toss it back up to you.
Yeah, Blockstream is one of these companies where like their reputation precedes them. You know, they do so many different things ranging from like lightning implementations to mining to I think like the satellite stuff. So I want to kick this to Naomi, you know, just you know, for the amount of time that you spent in the space and watching Blockstream sort of, you know, be one of these foundational companies in the space for a long time. What are you thinking about them now that they have all this capital on board, and where would you bet that they're going to concentrate their efforts going forward, Naomi?
Goodness, I don't even know where to begin to answer that question. I mean, Blockstream, you're right. Their reputation precedes them, and in a lot of different ways. So they're either loved or they're hated, right? There are lots of sectors of the crypto community that have a lot of animosity directed towards Blockstream. And then, meanwhile, they're doing some interesting things. Like I really enjoy the satellite project. When that came out, a lot of people are like, this is useless. What are they even doing this for? I love the idea of finding ways to make the internet more redundant. I think that it's great that people are looking into private satellites, or in their case, it wasn't their own satellite, but they're leasing, bandwidth on someone else's. I just like the idea of decentralizing away from the kind of more centralized internet structure we have at the moment. But I'll throw to you, Will, for your thoughts.
Yeah, so one other aspect of this that I think might get thrown under the radar is that they purchased an ASIC manufacturer out of Israel. I think it's Spoondoolies or something similar to that. I can't pronounce it correctly.
Yeah.
And just for the context on that, why that matters is traditionally mining manufacturing from any cryptocurrency, not just Bitcoin, has been dominated by the Asian markets. There really hasn't been many manufacturers in the US or Europe or elsewhere. Why? Mostly because the chips that are needed for making the machines reside in Taiwan or China or Malaysia. And so as we see those chip manufacturers kind of move out of the area, especially with the Biden administration's newfound focus on bringing chip manufacturing to the US in light of the COVID-19 and supply bottlenecks, you're going to see more manufacturers of ASICs pop up here in the US and in Europe and other places where they haven't been before. Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that was my big takeaway from this is like they're getting into the game of like chip manufacturing. That's a huge deal in a lot of different ways. It further kind of proliferates the various services they offer. And I think maybe we'll see more like crypto companies start to kind of broaden their expertise and not quite specialize in exactly one thing. But yeah, Will, as you said, like the Asian markets have very much so been the key chip manufacturers and ASIC manufacturers, which are like the crux of Bitcoin mining. And so seeing that move maybe not into North America, but a little bit closer and start to see that diversify as China cracks down, I think will be really important. And also in the context of an overall chip shortage that the world is experiencing right now.
All right, Jen, take us from British Columbia to El Salvador, and let's talk about what's next.
All right. So this is an interesting story. El Salvador is now saying that they will not force any of the nation's residents to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. So this is in contrast to the original law that we spoke a lot about earlier this year. The president wrote on Twitter, if someone wants to continue to carry cash, not receive a sign-on bonus, not win over customers who have Bitcoin, not grow their business and pay commission on remittances, they can continue to do so. So that seems a little bit shady to me, but I will continue. Now, Article 7 of the Bitcoin law still says that all economic agents must accept Bitcoin. And when asked if it was necessary to eliminate that article, the finance minister said, why? So the president has tweeted, we don't need to do it. It's still written in law. Ben, I'm curious for your take on this.
I mean, all my grandparents have passed away, but this sounds like them asking me, like, why don't you have kids? Like very passive aggressively in a lot of different ways. I was just kind of struck by the shadiness, Jen, which you alluded to. And I do think it maybe gets at the breakneck pace of the way in which this law was passed and the adoption and sort of the, rapture that sort of engulfed the Bitcoin community when talking about El Salvador. And now we're seeing, the slow walk back of this. We talked about, kind of the mentality, a little bit of like move fast, break things, or like fix it later. And I think now we're starting to see like the rubber's meeting the road in such a way that not everybody wants to adopt this. And so I think this is a really good example of like when crypto meets the meat space, as we talk about sometimes on this show. And like not everybody wants Bitcoin in this country, but the tonality of these tweets and kind of the statements is just like, all right, like you didn't have to throw like, I'm getting chilly under all this shade. But anyway, Naomi, I'll toss it to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, I just thought like it's a typical response from a dictator, right? It's like, why do the laws need to represent what I just told you on Twitter? I mean, I've been very clear in my tweets about this. There should be no, controversy there. So it's like, I mean, the way that they've handled this whole thing, all the crypto community is just clamoring to be on board because it's their currency of choice, right? But it is still a dictatorship that is mandating the use of something, and everyone sort of turn the blind eye because they're like, well, we really like the currency. So we like that it's being mandated. It's not really mandated. It's like, okay, so take it out of the law then. And even the president of the country is like, nah, we keep that in the law. But just, keep up to date with my Twitter to see, where things currently stand. It's just a very strange way of handling all of this. And I can understand why some people are very uneasy about something like this playing out this way. It's the same way that we have the Treasury Department, we have the IRS saying, oh, we're not going to enforce this law that the United States government just passed, where it's, got very broad sweeping definition or redefinition, I should say, of what a broker is. We're just going to ignore that and we're not going to redefine it. It's like, okay, that's great. So why not amend the language in the bill that passed to represent what you guys are now saying? So there's something that is bad in society when you've got laws that are kind of vaguely written and so interpreted however, the people in power want to interpret it. That's not really a good way to run things. And it's definitely not a good thing for El Salvador and for their reputation in this. I'm sad about this whole thing, because if they'd just come out without Article 7 and said, hey, this is now an option for people if they want it, and, no capital gains, all of this, I think you would have had such unity in the crypto community. You would have had everyone on boards, cheering this along. They would have gotten so much good press, and instead it divided the crypto community between those who were like, don't look at the letter of the law, look at the intent of the law, and people who were like, let's change the law and make sure that this is robust and not just some dictator who's saying something and next week he's going to say something different on Twitter. So it really did divide the community unnecessarily. I wish that they just come out with clear guidelines that didn't mandate anything, but it is what it is. And it's good that he's now clarifying this on Twitter. I like that there's no mandate, but yeah, I would like to see that reflected in the law as well. But I'll throw this to you, Will.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with you that laws should be minimalist in scope, because if you see the ripple effects later down the line that you're not anticipating. I think right now the infrastructure bill that's in front of the U.S. Congress, that is sort of the concern with everyone, that this broad sweeping legislation could have really terrible effects on the cryptocurrency industry here in the U.S. and then therefore abroad. Even though that's not the intention of the infrastructure bill and the language in that bill from the people who wrote it, they've said that that's not what they mean. The language is too broad, and it can be interpreted that way, though, later on. So that's a danger. The legal tender issue for El Salvador is interesting, though, because I guess the question also becomes how does the legal tender affect the dollar in the area as well? The government mandates that you have to be able to use a dollar or whatever El Salvador's currency is. And so you kind of have the same issue, right? They force you to use whatever currency you need.
So that's a mistake that a lot of people bring up. There's a difference between, mandating legal tender and different legal tender laws that most of the world has. Most of the world does not actually mandate that at point of sale transactions, a certain currency is required to be accepted. It's usually for past bills, but point of sale in a shop, you can have a sign on your shop that says, cash only, or you can have a sign on your shop that says we only accept Visa card, or whatever. You could have a sign on the shop that says I can only accept crypto. It's totally legal in most countries. But El Salvador, also with their US law, they're not mandating that people must accept this at point of sale transactions. It's for past debts. But now with the Bitcoin one, that's something different, where they are saying, you have to accept this at point of sale. And that's why there's so much uproar about Article 7, because it is quite rare to have something like that's written in. It's not it's not a normal thing for governments to put in place. So it's a slight nuance there that I think a lot of people missed in this.
So they're now, with that clarification from Bukele, they're saying that it's a legal tender law similar to any other, where you don't have to accept at point of sale.
Maybe
that's what they're saying. It seems like,
I don't know.
But if they don't change the writing, I worry about what we're going to see in the future when it comes to people accepting or not accepting Bitcoin.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. And when we get back from the break, we're going to talk about Michael Saylor. Microstrategy is back, buying more Bitcoins. Ben, hit me with the Scrooge McDuck dive. Come on, let me see it. Woo! All right, there it is. We'll talk about that after the break. Thank you, Ben, for taking me out. All right, stick with us. It's The Hash.
CoinDesk indexes, the market standard for crypto assets since 2014. Our trusted data powers billions in publicly traded funds. CoinDesk indexes are the standard used by institutions, and they're the key for investors looking to understand and access crypto markets.
As the company that launched the world's first ever Bitcoin ETF, we at Purpose chose the CoinDesk Bitcoin Price Index, the XBX, to price our assets.
CoinDesk indexes enabled the early adopters to build crypto investment vehicles, and they're already trusted by a new generation of global investors.
Welcome back to The Hash. So now we're going to move over to Microstrategy, which has again purchased more Bitcoins. The business analytics software provider has purchased another 3,907 Bitcoins to add to its original trove of the original cryptocurrency. This story thanks to Mr. Seward on the show with us today. So let's give it right off to you. It's a lot more Bitcoins that they purchased. And now they have
I got some more Bitcoins.
Well over 100,000.
Just a few.
Yep, just almost like 109,000 Bitcoin sitting there in the swimming pool of gold Bitcoin coins. So yeah, Michael Saylor, it's sort of felt like we haven't seen this in a while, so it's kind of back, like Bitcoin is kind of mounting, getting close to 50,000. I think it reached 50,000 for a minute the other day, and now Michael Saylor, the patron saint of big Bitcoin buying, is back in business, baby, and that's what we're seeing here. So I guess his conviction has not waned despite some price vacillation in recent months, and he is saying, "Hey, MicroStrategy is still all about that Bitcoin, boss," and he bought some more. So that's the story. It kind of feels like, I mean, I remember when this used to happen, it used to be really exciting. It used to like drive the price and everyone would like freak out on Twitter. And right now it's just sort of like, yeah, it's routine. He's just bought another, 177 million in Bitcoin in one fell swoop. No big deal. So to me, it was kind of like, when this came out this morning, I was kind of remembering the excitement of those early days when, this publicly traded software firm went all in on Bitcoin. So just fun remembering the early chapters of this cycle. Ben, I'll toss it to you. I'm just curious for your take.
I was just gonna say, y'all, haven't we come so far? What is it? I don't even know what month it is. It's like August, right? But like from like January on, like we talked about, unicorns turning into narwhals. We talked about the excitement about Michael Saylor purchasing Bitcoin. Like, remember Elon Musk, that dude who's now creating a bot that's really just a dude dressed in spandex for some reason. It's like, I think that like, incremental progress here is really important because it does show like the naturalization of all of these sort of like incremental aspects in this regard. So like we talked yesterday about like Visa buying an NFT and we were all kind of like, why, but also okay. And that would have been like shocking news in January. And so I think it's important because it just shows how institutional this is becoming and just how integral to like the current discussion and zeitgeist, crypto and all the affiliated stuff like DeFi and everything else is, because it's not going away. And I think that's my big takeaway here is how unsurprised I am by some of these things. And it shows, just how far we've come over the course of like 2021.
See, this is what happens when the SEC doesn't approve a Bitcoin ETF. You have forced Michael Saylor to just become the Bitcoin ETF.
Don't you trigger Gensler.
MicroStrategy is now just Bitcoin. It's a proxy stock. All their company does is have.
There we go.
There he is. Look at that.
Yes.
That's him.
All
That's
illusions of Scrooge
Yes.
McDuck. This is it.
Yes.
I feel like the SEC did
That's
this.
amazing. I feel
Shout
like we
out
can
to
just
our
end the
graphics
show
designer
now.
there.
Yeah.
We got to get our faces
Someone's
on
gotta
like
say
the
the
little
line.
on the nephews, Anyway,
There is
What's
no
the line,
second
Will?
best.
You do it.
That's it.
Is that a
There's no
face of a
second
best.
maxi? He looks so serious.
Yeah.
You guys
he
haven't seen
looks
the video,
very-
obviously.
This needs to be made
That's
into an NFT purchased by MicroStrategy. And then we have come full
Absolutely.
circle.
Or Visa. So
Yeah.
really get
I have
into
one
that
point I
stuff
want to
these
bring up
days.
that's interesting to me is
Yeah,
that
bring it all.
you have this company purchasing Bitcoin, and the method of purchasing it is leveraging the traditional finance system that we have today, which like is the purpose of Bitcoin, is to get rid of all that. So that's just kind of your ironic note for the day. I'm gonna leave it there because Control didn't like my idea, but I'm gonna give it to Naomi.
I liked it.
We're gonna move on.
We loved your
I want to talk
idea.
about the world of DeFi.
interesting.
So some interesting things happening there. So the popular decentralized exchange Sushiswap that we all know and love. It's the latest DeFi project to actually join Avalanche's $180 million incentive program. So Avalanche Rush is this incentive program that is doling out a bunch of money in the form of liquidity tokens, and it's attracted lending protocol Aave and automatic market maker Curve already. Now Sushiswap has joined the gravy train. Avalanche is a super interesting protocol. So they were, an anonymous white paper was released in 2018 by a group called Team Rocket. And I think it's Pokemon, where Rocket is like Satoshi's arch nemesis or whatever. So it's like the kind of this interesting anonymous group. And then you had Amin Gun Sira jumping on that, creating the Avalanche protocol and building out about, using that protocol for his own chain. And then you also have like Bitcoin Cash explore this as a pre-consensus method. It's just this very interesting third consensus model that no one ever talks about. We always talk about this, binary of it's proof of work or proof of stake. It's like, actually, there is a third family of consensus mechanisms out there, and that's what this is based on. So it's kind of interesting that now we're seeing a bunch of DeFi projects jumping on it. Could be because of that mad cash that's been handed out to them in the form of incentives. But it's also just a really fast protocol. The consensus mechanism just works in a really, really fast way. So I'm going to throw this to you, Will. Sorry, Zach, I think I just saw your hand go up when I almost threw it to Will. So I'm going to throw to you instead. What are your thoughts on all of this and the future of DeFi?
I intercepted that pass. Sorry, Will. I think liquidity mining was like the most brilliant growth hack to come out of DeFi summer 2020, right? This is, liquidity mining, when you think about it, is sort of gussied up terminology for free money, right? Like in terms of getting people onto these platforms, these platforms have found that these incentive systems are really the most effective way to bootstrap liquidity and fast. So the Avalanche approach here, they're bringing a gun to the knife fight, and they are really going like whole hog in attracting people to a fairly new base layer. And they're getting some pretty exciting DeFi projects, one of them being Sushiswap, to set up shop on their network. And they're saying, hey, all you DeFi people out there, come on over. We got $15 million in extra token incentives for you to commit some of your assets to this fledgling protocol. So I think, just like the phenomenon of liquidity mining, I think we sort of take it for granted, but it was really this profound innovation from Compound and others last summer that really set this DeFi thing off in motion. I mean, you just see people responding to these incentives in big ways, and I would expect that to happen here in this case as well, as DeFi degens look to maximize their returns. I'll kick it. I'll bounce it back to you, Naomi, and then I won't intercept it when you give it back to Will.
Exactly. I think that it's really interesting to see the way that they've rolled all of this out. So, Will, I'll throw to Will first, and then I'll add my thoughts there. But Will, you're the kind of DeFi master. What are your thoughts on all?
Will's been given so many titles on this show.
Many titles. I deserve them all and more. In terms of like Avalanche's adoption as a layer one, it's not surprising that they're throwing money at the wall. Ethereum is like the nesting home for every DeFi app just because it was the easiest to move on to. Most people code in Solidity who are in the space now, or like most people have the ability to learn Solidity and start using that programming language and boot these things up. Ethereum has a very empowering culture for developers, and people don't like moving outside of that space. There's kind of like an Ethereum maximalist vibe going on, the same way they have Bitcoin going on nowadays. I think that you also see like some other layer ones being in the space as well. Polkadot also tried to poach a lot of these teams, or have successfully poached them to build applications on their layer one as well. So this just adds validity to the multi-chain idea that you'll have multiple layer zeros of sorts nowadays, like Ethereum, your Polkadots, your Avalanches, and they're all talking to one another in some form. If that comes about, we'll still see. But right now, money being thrown at these projects certainly helps them out. But Naomi, I will throw it back to you.
Yeah, so just on that note about interoperability, I think that's just a really smart way that Avalanche, Aave is kind of looking into this and approaching this. So you have this quote from Nate George, who's a crypto asset analyst at Cumberland, who says, as interoperability infrastructure advances, I imagine there'll be an argument that the lines of which chains you are on will blur and be abstracted away from the end user experience. This is something that Amin has also talked about a lot, just providing those bridges between all of these layer one chains so that the user doesn't really need to know. They just want a good experience. They just want it to be fast and cheap and, to have a lot of liquidity on there. And so they probably don't even care unless they're tribal and a part of this maxi community. There's only one. Otherwise, people are just looking for a good experience. So I agree with that. And I agree with you, Will, that we are probably going to see this, multi-chain and interoperable future. So that's pretty exciting there. But let's change track. Ben, I'm going to throw it to you for more stuff in the DeFi world.
Exactly. Continuing in the aspects of DeFi adoption, let's talk about how that is not happening on the scale that we might think about based on how much we talk about it in this show. So a new report from Chainanalysis found that largely DeFi is used by people in higher income countries, and the adoption is much lower than in the wider crypto ecosystem. I thought this was really interesting because I know, Will, you probably did too, Zach, we did too, like got caught up in reporting on DeFi Summer when that happened. And it's sort of been like a rolling narrative. And we talk about, various kind of crypto apps and banks and stuff trying to give people more access to it. But it looks like the adoption is really coming from high income traders, investors, and things like that. And maybe not some people that are just trying to access a decentralized finance system. So Will, your initial thoughts here?
Not to be blunt, but water is wet. It's not super surprising to see this. Like, it's the people who have access to the internet in the first place are people who live in higher wealth societies or communities. And that's unfortunate to see that, but that's just realistic. The thing is, like, where are these applications going is the real question. And there's some real promise for not only Bitcoin adoption over the last 10 years. You see it being used in Nigeria as a method for moving money in and out of the country. But we're slowly seeing some of these other applications being used in other places around the world. If you want to get a loan, you can do that on something like Compound. Of course, the chicken and egg problem is there. You have to have Ether first to be able to get that loan. So that problem still needs to be fixed. But I think like DeFi is asking the right questions, and nobody's saying that DeFi is already answering problems right now. It's not getting the banked or the unbanked banked yet, but it's moving towards that in the way that the traditional financial system hasn't been able to do. It's been very locked in Western countries. If you're on a sanctions list, you're not touching any U.S. money. I mean, just take a look at what's going on in Afghanistan right now as that country is falling apart in front of our eyes. Dollars are more precious than ever there, but nobody has their hands on them, and they won't be able to get their hands on them for quite a while. So throw it down to Naomi for your thoughts.
Thank you for throwing cold, wet water on my article, Will. Sorry, Naomi, take it away.
I think that when you say it's not getting the unbanked banked, I disagree with that. Obviously, you're inferring you're talking about on a large scale, and you're talking about certain unbanked communities. But within the US, it absolutely is. DeFi is super popular for getting loans. A lot of people, who are taking out mortgages, the whole idea is to avoid capital gains, right? So you can get a loan on one of these systems by putting in a bunch of collateral. You're not actually selling your crypto. So you're not actually, creating a taxable event. So a lot of people are actually using this, and they don't have bank accounts. They're not existing in the traditional financial system. They have crypto, and they're just trying to find ways to live off that. But I agree with the sentiment there that, we're talking about like other countries, and we're trying to get people in really corrupt dictatorial regimes onboarded to this because, the money supply in a lot of these countries is just so terrible and corrupted. So I definitely agree that we're not quite there. I'm interested in what Cardano is doing on that front. That kind of is really their purview, where they really focus a lot of their time. They're doing some really interesting stuff on that front. So I'm interested to see how this plays out over the next 5 years. I do definitely think that this is going to be a really emerging sector getting involved with crypto increasingly so, especially as, people have a lot of resources to throw around, and a lot of people feeling generous. You see a lot of philanthropy in the crypto space, and I think a lot of people are going to be trying to build out infrastructure in a lot of different countries. But we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah, just off the back of what you're saying, Naomi, I mean, we spoke earlier this week, I think, about Yield Guild Games raising $5 million from A16Z, and we've seen what they've been able to do with Axie Infinity in countries like the Philippines, getting the unbanked to play this game and cash out in DeFi. A lot of them are making more money than they would make in minimum wage. And so I think as that user experience that we spoke about in the last segment is developed and built out, we are going to see mainstream adoption, and I think we're going to see it very quickly. Almost the way we saw NFTs kind of skyrocket. I think we're going to see the same thing with DeFi as these little things are figured out, because the applications are there and the communities who need them are finding them. But Ben, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I just always appreciate articles like this because I think it really, and also reports like this, I think it puts it all in perspective in some ways. Like, we're very much so steeped in this and talking about it, but there still are like huge barriers to entry, Will, like you mentioned, in terms of getting access to these things. Like even in the US, right, like a broadband internet connection is like not a thing in a variety of different regions for the most part. And so there's all this stuff that like as the decentralized world of finance gets built out and as crypto gets more adopted, like hopefully there's further infrastructure that's built out to support that in a variety of countries and other areas. And so for me, while we talk about DeFi and we're steeped in it in a lot of different ways, it shows just how small of a market share per se in terms of world population it has. And I look forward to that increasing potentially, but it shows that, crypto and stuff does not live in a void, right? It exists like within this larger ecosystem of tech and everything else that people need access to. They need to, have the knowledge about, and the user experience does need to get better in a wide variety of instances.
Good stuff, gang.
What a way
Good
to
show
wrap.
Today. That was a very nice closing thought, Ben. Well done.
So
Well
good
done.
at those closing thoughts.
Look at him go. All right, good stuff. All right, well, that's the show for today. This was The Hash. I'm Zach. That's Naomi. Ben's down there. You got Jen. You got Will. I like the hats, guys. Good look. I like the lobster shirt and the flowers and the tie-dye.
Quality.
It is a
There we
best
go.
day.
Look at that.
What's
Zach
this
can button up and
outfit?
button down.
What are you
Exactly,
wearing?
depending on how you're feeling.
Fresh.
That's the
Okay,
Tuesday
anyway.
morning editor garb right there.
That's
Yes,
it.
that's how we do
What
it.
8 a.m.
All right,
were you
well,
working on?
just trying to get through the day, just trying to get through these content mines, okay? Avoiding the content black lung and just putting another day behind us. So that was The Hash for Tuesday. We'll be back on Wednesday with more of The Hash. All About Bitcoin is on at 3 p.m. Eastern, CoinDesk.com. It's always here. We're 24/7 global crypto news. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. And hey, have a great day. All right.
All right. I'm going to Scrooge McDuck my way back to those content mines.
Dive it.
Scrooge it.
Do it. Yes.
Oh my
Nice.
gosh.
I love it.